Welcome, everyone. There's a lot of talk. I mean, so it goes without saying that a lot of modern dating and romantic relationships, really social relationships, really are predicated on a lot of the superficial qualities you've all heard about a million times. But there's this huge mistake people make in that they really desire or want to take this biologically deterministic stance on the valued traits, which is a little ridiculous. To me, it shows maybe reading a lot of studies, misunderstanding, the nature, for example, of a heritable trait. A lot of people will say, well, X trait is heritable, so therefore it's genetics. And it's like, well, for example, there's obviously an inborn, not inborn, a very deeply socialized and internalized preference women and to a lesser extent men have for white people as partners, for example. And, you know, while it might be, I guess, attractive for some people to say, well, it's obvious you prefer people of your own race or whatever. I mean, that's automatically, we can disregard that because, with the exception of black women by a slim majority, all women prefer white men. Like they think that that's the most attractive race. But, you know, that's obviously not correct in terms of a matter of biological necessity, right? I mean, people, it seems this is the obvious result of a lot of propaganda, a lot of who controls the resources, you know, untold amounts of historical and cultural events unfolding have brought us here to where people learn this. It's conditioned. So that's an example of a trait that's genetically determined, but it's not a matter of like an essentialist thing like, oh, they're responding to something about the genes. No, it's just that this trait that's associated, like as a matter of correlation with the genotype, as in modern cultural conditioning conditions people favorably to these traits, it doesn't mean that people are responding to some innate biological value set. And I think this is the danger. This is the danger of the pills in that they really can't see that a lot of these value systems, they hate this term, but it's true. It's a social construction. To say, oh, height, race, even looks, for example. I mean, to say these are just these inflexible biological qualities is just, I mean, it borders on stupid. It borders on very gullible, naive. I think people like to think that, you know, in the dating sphere somehow we're safe from, being a bunch of monkeys in the sense of not we're animals, but in the sense of monkey see, monkey do. All the worst prejudices that have been writ in our society, at large, like they're enforced in the romantic and dating world. And, for example, they've recently done studies, showing that a lot of the preference for, facial looks, for example, is, most of that is actually culture specific. It's not, there's not an like some objective standard. And I mean, it's so weird. You can just look at like over the last 100 years, the men who were viewed as attractive, the women versus today. It's a total different, like they look different. The people look way different. But people still hold on to this idea that there's this objective standard that we can just biologically sense. Humans are the social animal par excellence. They learn, right? That's the thing. Culture, we condition. And so I feel like a lot of this has to do with people not really understanding, I think, heritability. They'll say X trait is heritable, and that's the end of it. I mean, it's like, okay, heritability is just a statistic that says how much of a variation in a trait is due to variation in genotype. And, when you're studying plants and you have highly controlled environments, this data means something. It's a brute fact. You really can isolate, and that's great. However, with humankind, when you have things like culture and things like that, there's a lot of issue. For example, environments themselves can run in families. If you're poor, your kids are likely to be fucking poor. So right there, you got a condition that's due to your genotype, but it's not. It's actually no, you're poor, but you wouldn't know it because again, it also runs with your line. It's heritable, and people just think just because they designate something with a G, that it necessarily means you're actually capturing something meaningful about the genotype, which is the ultimate correlation causation flaw. And we can see this just in basic induction. If you're thinking that sexual selection and natural selection are acting, to favor certain traits, you would not expect there to be a high heritability, right? Because what does selection do? It weeds out. It decreases variance. So if you look at a trait and it's like, oh, it's got a high heritability, that kind of cuts way against it being selected for. Just common sense. It's just like this sort of illiteracy of what these things actually mean. It propagates this ultimate notion of merit where there is none. No, like the black pill. It's not that it goes too far. It doesn't go far enough. No, no, no. It's not that people are judging people based on these biological immutable qualities. No, it's way fucking dumber. It's literally every bad prejudice, every bad oppressive regime. It's being literally coded. People are being trained to enforce it. They enforce it against each other. They like that's how bad it is. So, I mean, for example, like people talk about hypergamy and women's standards. Okay, just use your head. 6'6", 6 feet, six figures, six pack, or six whatever. Uh, is that a real biological immutable law of just attraction of good genes? Because I got to tell you, there's women in hunter gatherer tribes. I'll give the guys the fact that they tend to be pretty ripped because they're active, but those guys are missing teeth, probably smell like piss most of the time. Yet they happily find women. The thing that seems to be the recurring correlate with reproductive success in men, at least, is status. That is just your rank in the local tribe. And unfortunately, your rank is a thing that's conferred upon you. There's a partial like component of coercion in some cases, but really it's more a matter of persuasion. And you know ultimately, status can be conferred by anything that people dream up as and are convinced has value. It's like gold. There's no reason for gold to be valuable. There's scarcer metals, there's shinier metals, but it's just we're all convinced that gold is valuable, and that's that. But just because we all think it's valuable doesn't mean there's some intrinsic quality that about gold that makes it valuable. It's just we all have agreed. And it's the same with all these traits that people, practically fetishize as being the arbiters of beauty and indicating some kind of genetic quality. I mean, the whole genetics, good genetics health thing has been totally debunked. There's no link between health and what the things we consider to be attractive. I mean, whether it's facial attractiveness, masculinity, whether it's height, anything. And it's that's really the sad thing, is that these pills and these thinkers and whatever are too quick to really go the last step. The last step is it doesn't have to be this way. So just think about that. All right. Well, until next time.